Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now this is the first of a two-part special dedicated to Vice Press's open house. This is an event that takes place now. It's been running 2 years in Sheffield and honestly is a dream come true for anyone that loves art as much as me. During the event you get to meet all of your favourite artists. I really truly mean this. It's the best artists in the world all together in one room, and the love and the creativity is just something that you'll never experience anywhere else. They have so many amazing guests all displaying their work. You can buy it, get it signed, and it's just an amazing day. And I was extremely honoured to be invited to go along and record live interviews for an audience all day in Sheffield. And the best part is, I'm here now to share those interviews with you. So on today's episode, you're going to hear interviews from Doaly, Andrew Swainson, Dave O'Flanagan, ROYALSTON, Carly AF, and Drew Millward. A real huge variety of guests, so many great interviews, and I can't wait to share them all with you. During these interviews, I didn't actually include it on today's episode, but we were lucky enough to give some amazing prizes away as well. All the artists were so kind and so generous and offered some really exclusive prints of theirs, and honestly the response was amazing, and it was so good to see so many fans of their work winning some exclusive and very rare and amazing prints. So thank you to each and every artist for being so generous. So what I want to do now is to get straight to the interviews, and opening up today is Doaly, Andrew Swainson and Dave O'Flanagan. So here we are talking all things art. Hello and welcome to the Mark and Me podcast. Today we're doing live podcasts at Open House, so if you're in the queue and you don't want to miss out, feel free to come down this way and listen to some great interviews with some amazing artists. On stage today we have the amazing Andrew Swainson. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you.
Dave, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
And Doaly, how are you?
I'm doing good.
So what I love to ask all artists, I've done podcasts with most of the people in this room of artists, but what I love to do is take it right back to your childhood. And is there a certain film or a poster or a TV series you fell in love with that made you start looking at those posters or pieces of artwork that kind of made you then say, I want to do this, I want to make my own? So Andy, kick things off.
Yeah, well, I think like the first pieces of illustration that I became maybe not necessarily obsessed with, but really caught my attention weren't actually like film posters.
Okay.
They're like book jackets and stuff, horror film sort of book jackets by Dennis Gifford and stuff in the 70s. Towards the middle of the 70s, I had a lot of Aurora model kits, and I was always very captured by the illustrations on the covers of those. And also I had this soundtrack album, which was like just a compilation of movie soundtracks, like Jaws and The Exorcist and what have you. The cover for that was quite captivating as well. It wasn't until sort of fairly recently that I found out a lot of these things were all done by the same artist.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was all Tom Chantrell's work, this guy who did the original UK quad for Star Wars.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I'd been sort of getting influenced by this stuff without necessarily knowing that it was all by the same guy. So Dave, what about yourself?
The first film I saw in the cinema in 1989 was Batman, and then followed by Last Crusade. So first and foremost, the design of obviously the Batman poster was something that was very influential on me, but also the Swainson Crusade poster. So I think that was my first kind of like, oh wow, like movie posters are cool. And those two films were kind of integral into me getting into pop culture art generally. Like my dad brought me to the cinema a lot as a kid and gave me that passion for it. And I guess kind of boring, not as exciting as Andrew's answer. Swainson was kind of was behind everything, and that's kind of what kicked it off for me.
Drew Swainson, I know he's going to be mentioned a lot today during these podcasts, but I remember even as a kid looking at some of his work and getting like a magnifying glass and kind of zooming in
and being so impressed with the detail. And I think it's just incredible how much of an impact he's had, not just on everyone in the room today, but on the whole world. Like, it's just mind-blowing what he's done.
Yeah. And there's a great documentary, the Drew documentary on, him creating posters. And it's just so cool to see the start to finish, which he does with the Hellboy 2 poster, I think. And it's just, very...
Little things as well, like when he had the time limit for the thing. And I think his wife was like, you need to get it done tonight. And he didn't sleep and just did it overnight. But like, it blows my mind. That's one of the most iconic posters in horror. And it was kind of I'll quickly pull up something together and get it done. It's insane.
Super cool.
So, Doaly, talk to me. What about yourself?
I had like movie posters on my wall when I was like a 7-8-year-old. My parents had a very small corner shop, and part of that corner shop was a video section. So we used to get like the latest films and posters in, and my 2 older brothers would plaster the wall, bedroom wall, with movie posters. So I was very lucky from that point of view that they had some great taste. The posters on the wall were like Back to the Future, Temple of Doom, Police Academy. All of these are all Drew's, by the way. But particularly there was one for Nightmare on Elm Street. It was a quad poster. The artist name at the moment escapes me. I believe it's Drew Millward, but I could be wrong there. But that poster specifically, because I hadn't watched the film when I had the poster because I was about 8 years old. But you could see all the paintwork. You could see the artist actually behind the poster, not just, it wasn't a photograph. So that was really like, oh great, someone actually drew this. There was a signature on there. It wasn't just like, here's a photograph. Here's someone painting and creating a poster. So that was really special from my point of view.
I mean, all of you have got some incredible pieces. I've been around the tables this morning before this cold place opened. And what I was really impressed with is the range of people's artwork here today. Out of all the stuff you've done, and I know it's quite a hard one to put you on the spot, but is there a design you're most proud of that you've done yourself? I know I saw your Jaws one today that you've done, Andrew, that was an old poster, but you've like resurrected it. It must be quite hard to come up with something kind of original and different when something like Jaws is so iconic. It's quite hard to kind of not do the obvious and copy the original. So I love the fact you've gone to something completely different. But is there one that you're really proud of that you look back on your work and you just think, that's my favorite, No. No, I've got so mostly that. Yeah, no, I've got a few pieces that I'm really pleased with, and I think without a doubt, I think every single one of them is an idea that came to me, like just like that. It wasn't the result of like a long thought process or some sort of torturous process of elimination of other ideas. It formed in my head straight away, and I thought, I can do that. I know how that's supposed to work. And the Jaws. In fact, all the prints that I've got hanging behind me as my store are pretty much those, like Halloween, the Jaws feet shot, Jojo Rabbit, all those ones. They came in a flash, and they're the ones I'm still most proud of.
Yeah, there's a couple. I think there's an Aliens one I did for an Aliens art book a number of years ago of Ripley and Aliens. My daughter's name is Ripley, and it's very near and dear to me. I've been trying to get it released for many years, but it's really difficult to get licensed. But it's probably my favorite piece. And Scream, I did a Scream piece many years ago for Gallery 1988, and that's the purest, most strongest design thing that I've done, because I'm not a designer, and that was, it took about 3 months to work on the concept because I had all these ideas that were similar to my Silence of the Lambs piece, and finally it just came to me. VHS is stacked and making the ghost face out of the labels, and it's the one I'm most proud of because I don't think I'll ever have a better idea. So, well,
amazing. Doaly?
Probably it'll be Guardians of the Galaxy. 10 years ago, next month I drew it. It's one of those things, it was a poster that was made out of necessity because at the time I wasn't great at drawing people. And just looking at what was out there, it was like, hey, everyone's drawing the entire team for this poster. It's the first Guardians film. I was like, okay, that's not me. That's not what I'm going to do. So let me find a different way of answering that brief that I set myself, in the sense of like, let's make a Guardians piece that really speaks to the story and what I felt was the main connection, which in this case was music. So it's the whole thing with the headphones and Star-Lord. And I was like, okay, that's the way I'm going to do a poster because that's where my strengths lie. So I have the pin on my table, and it's like on the back of the pin is the original sketch that I did, where I was in the office job doodling on a post-it note. So it's there from the back of it. You can see the story and you can get the pin 10 years later.
It's really cool as well. I think you're not going to have a better idea either again.
Yeah, it's just it's a fun one. Yeah, I know. It's a fun piece, and I like. It's nice looking back 10 years because it's been 10 years, and then I'm surprised I'm still like grateful that I'm still making art and posters.
I know this is a question that you might get asked a lot, but I think it's really important. Are there any pieces of work you've completed that you're really eager to get licensing for, or to get over the line, that you're kind of sat on, that you just want the world to see, that it's kind of a struggle just to kind of make those changes or do something that then kind of get it finally greenlit, or is it quite a nice run that the things you've done have seen the day in light?
Well, I'm just like so happy to have fallen into working with like Chris, because they've like helped my well, I don't want to say career, but I mean it is, but they've helped my sort of journey through doing this type of work immensely, and I feel I'm at the point now where I can just put an idea to them and make me. If it's something that you get the license to, then it feels like it's an easy journey to get it done now. Whereas obviously prior to working with them, it was more of a pipe dream, really.
That's amazing.
I mean, I've got a Creature of a Black Lagoon print that finished, but without them, that would be that print that you were asking for.
Yeah. And yourself?
I've got a Big Lebowski releasing through Vice in the next couple of months, 3 to 4 months maybe, and it's been gestating for a long time. But basically, my first ever gallery release was Lebowski through Hero Complex, and that was what Vice saw and then approached me to do an official one. And it's gone through like the jigs and reels of Universal approval and Jeff Bridges approval, which is like the coolest thing for me, because I was like, Jeff Bridges got to see this because he's got image rights over that movie, strangely enough. So that's nearly over the line, and it's taken a while, but it's a piece that I can't wait to get out there. So and again, same as just echo what Andrew said, Vice has just been so easy to work with, and like I feel again the same kind of like privilege to have worked with them, because same thing, it was like a pipe dream to work with them, so it's been great.
Please tell me, when Jeff Bridges approved, you just got an email saying the dude approves. Please.
I wish. No, it goes into some Universal exec or some pen pusher's email, and I mean, I would have loved to see his reaction.
Why is Russian going? Yeah, that'll be it. Yeah. Doaly?
I would say it's one that I drew for like the sequel trilogy for Star Wars. It was a set of 3 posters. I think I drew it about when the second film came out, and the third one was about to come out. It's one of those, it got submitted, it possibly got approved. We did some rejigging, but it never got to release. So it's one of those that's just sat there, and I'm like, because it's also the things like, it's whether you enjoy the film or not, but it's like, is it actually going to sell? Is there an audience for that trilogy as there was for the previous trilogies? So it's like, it's finding the right time. I think at some point everyone endears to a series, and I think its time will come. So I'm still sitting on it. So hopefully in a few years, when people like see it with more fondness, that'll get a release. But at the moment, if you want to have a look at it, it's on my phone, but that's the only way you can see it at the moment.
My final question for you all today, before we do the big prize giveaway, is there still like a tick list for you? I do it with podcast guests, but is there still a project that is inside you that you really want to work on? Is there a dream project? I know possibly you've worked with Marvel and stuff like that, but is there still that one that you each want to just go out and hopefully one day get that poster done for a certain film or franchise? I know I put you on the spot there.
Well, my answer is the same. Universal Monsters.
Yeah,
and I'm doing it. So
you've done it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's other things that I'd like to do, but I mean, to be honest, I'm just quite happy to just carry on working. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Most jobs are enjoyable to do. So I don't really have like a bucket list of things to do. I'd like to do an Empire cover maybe, or stuff. I'm quite happy with any work at the time. I enjoy all the work. It's never really torturous. So it's always quite fun. So
yeah, that's good. It's never really work.
No, not really. I mean, it is sometimes.
Yeah. Next question: what's the worst piece of work you've had to do? David, how about you?
Batman and indie. And I'm working on Batman 89 at the moment, and working up concepts. And indie, I've had I think 6 Raiders concepts rejected when I was working with Acme back in the day. Indie's a difficult one to get off the ground, because Lucasfilm wants something quite specific, and that's kind of not always the way my brain works. So, but yeah, I'd love to, and hopefully with Bottleneck at some point, would love to do some indie work, and that would be, Jaws was the big one. That was my first license piece, really, and that was a massive bucket list thing. But yeah, there's still plenty. I'm such a movie nerd that there's 1,000,001 movies that I still want to do, so.
Aim high, and I reckon this time next year we could be coming here and seeing that piece.
That would be great.
Doaly?
I'd probably say it's Indiana Jones, but it's specifically Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Grew up with that film. That was the first indie that I'd watched. And for me, it was that bridge between, like, oh, there's a bit of India there, there's a bit of the West there. And that's basically my upbringing. It's that mix of cultures and mix of cinema. So I'd love to do an Indian cinema poster for Temple of Doom. I have pitched it. There is like a sketch of it out there, but like, I don't think Lucas went for it. So it's one that I was like, I will just draw it for fun and just have it as a portfolio piece without it being sold at some point, because I think it's a step too far for him to do something like that. But I'd love to do it. It just pays homage to like my childhood of, loving that film and watching it with my folks.
There's been a lot of indie love today. I love it. It's awesome. Did you watch the last film?
Oh, yeah.
I did, yeah.
Yep. Anyway, so thank you. I thought it was great.
I thought it was great too, actually.
Yes. Please make a lot of noise for the artists we've had today. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming on.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So that was the first set of interviews of this open house special from Vice Press. Incredible guys, Doaly, Andrew Swainson and Dave O'Flanagan. Doaly, a returning guest to Mark and me, and brand new guests Andrew and Dave were absolutely awesome. So thanks so much for coming on. And please guys, if you're listening, go and check out their work. They're awesome, and you need to go and invest some money in their incredible pieces, because they are seriously absolutely amazing and you will not be disappointed. Next up on today's special, I'm going to be joined by ROYALSTON and Carly AF. Both brand new guests to Mark and me, so I think the best thing to do is to get straight to their interviews.
Hello, everyone. We're now doing the second podcast of today. So we've got Carly and ROYALSTON join us today. Everyone, give it up for these guys. Thank you both for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast live at the Vice Press Open House.
Thank you very much.
What I'd love to do, Carly, I'm going to ask you first. It will be the same question for you both, but I'm really intrigued. When you were a kid, was there a certain film or TV show that you watched, or there was a poster in the house, or maybe it was a VHS artwork that made you want to be an artist yourself? Was there something that triggered it all?
I think probably animation for me. I love watching cartoons. And also toy packaging.
Lovely.
Going to the toys and Toys R Us that you're not allowed to have. But the packaging artwork is always really cool.
It's amazing. I mean, some of the early artwork, I think, of the packaging, I'll show my age now, but when I was a kid, it was even in Tesco. My dad would take me shopping at the weekends and I'd be allowed to pick a toy. And I'd always pick the original Ghostbuster figures because the packaging was incredible and the artwork. I always remember He-Man. And my mom threw the lot away, and I'm still not going to speak to her ever again for it. And I think that's valid. But toy packaging's great. I haven't heard anyone use this one as an example. Normally it's a DVD cover or a video cover, but can you remember the certain toys that you looked at or were playing with?
It was a lot of stuff like Power Rangers or Transformers. A lot of really cool painted artwork, like really dramatic, really colourful. So I think you can see that in my artwork as well.
So ROYALSTON, was yours toys, or was it a film or a poster?
I've been thinking, because I don't know if necessarily like the posters when I was a kid that I was that bothered by. I mean, there was Return of the Jedi on VHS was like a big moment, and I watched that a lot. And then I watched lots of the animated shows too, because of big bright colours. But it was actually more concept art for me that got me into it. So it was the concept art of films like Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars, looking at the concept art, and then that's how I segued into finding and discovering AMPs, and then that's how I kind of got into going, oh, I like that, and going into posters.
Wow. That's going to have to edit that bit out now, which won't be easy.
No, the dog agrees with me.
I was going to say, yeah. What I'd love to know as well, it was there a certain point that you knew that was the road you wanted to take? So obviously we all do jobs at college and at school, and it's just pocket money or to pay the bills. But was there a moment that it changed for you and you thought, I want to just do art for as often as I can and basically try and make that a career? Was there a certain piece you did or a moment that you remember?
For me, I do quite a lot of other illustration stuff. So I do like picture books, and I do quite a bit in sort of sci-fi fantasy covers and things as well. So like, I've always just wanted to do art as the main thing. But as for posters, I think I just Vice Press just put out one day that they worked with other artists, so I was kind of like, hello. So I did some stuff with them, and I did some sort of classic horror things that was based on books. So, but they were very kind of cinematic looking.
Yeah.
So I was sort of seeing all the cool posters around. I was like, oh, this looks like a really fun thing to do. So I didn't have like a revelation. It was just sort of seeing loads of cool stuff around and sort of trying to get into that.
Amazing. Wilston, what about yourself?
I had no idea really what I wanted to do at all. And I went away and I was living in Canada for about 6 months. And it wasn't until I came back and I was like, okay, I need to now figure out what I want to do. And I was working part-time in a sports shop. And it was only then when I started playing around with design and graphic design in general, because that's something I'd always kind of had I'd always like sketched and liked the idea of designing logos or other graphic ideas throughout my youth, but never actually thought that's something I would like to do as a full-time thing. But then when it actually came to me going, right, what do I need to do? And I was working part-time in a shop, but I started doing that as well. And it was then when I started getting into it, I was like, yeah, actually, I think I'd like to do this and try and do this freelance and see where this goes. And it just kind of blossomed from there, I think.
With your kind of display stands today, I've been round before everyone got in here this morning. I was able to look round. There's such a beautiful variety in all the people's work here today. But I wondered, with your own individual stand, if you had a favourite piece that you bought today that you're most proud of.
I think I still really like my Jurassic Park pieces.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, normally whatever I've just made is my favourite until I make something else, and then that's my new favourite.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still really like those. I've done some really sort of grotty neon stuff recently that I'm really enjoying. So those are maybe my favourite at the minute. Like, they're super bright and
yeah,
really bright.
Beautiful. And Wilson, what about yourself? There's so much you've got to choose from.
I've got quite a diverse bunch of stuff on my table, because I've got my lots of my illustrations, which is, very cloud based, and there are a few favourites in there. But I think at the moment, I think it's my VHS sleeves, my little X-Men VHS inspired sleeves, partly because I love the abstract way of thinking about it, and it's a very, very different mindset to illustration and drawing that way. I try and incorporate costume designs from characters, storylines from the show, that sort of thing into a poster, but I'm only allowed to use like straight line basic shapes, so it's almost like a design challenge, and I think I nailed them, so I'm quite proud of them. But like you said, that's literally the most recent thing I've made, so I'm sure if I look back up, or in like a 6 months time or whatever, I'll say something completely different.
I did a series of podcasts on Mark and Me called The Voice Behind the Art, and I interviewed a lot of the artists that are here today, and it's quite fascinating, I always think, to know when your piece that you're working on is completely finished. And I know that's difficult because everyone I meet that works in art is a perfectionist, because they are finding it so difficult to know and say, oh, I could just change the light a bit more, I could change the eye or do this. How do you guys discipline yourself to know that, like, I need to now say enough is enough, I need to go to bed and then just say that poster is finished?
If someone knows the answer to that, I would actually love to know what that is.
Welcome to the counselling session.
Normally, I think it's if you're just messing around with a piece and you're not actually improving it, you're just sort of changing it, then it's time to stop and maybe do something else for a bit, look at it again and see, because sometimes you're just messing with it and you're not really helping it. So just take a break, have a look at it later, or more often it's when it's time to hand it in, like the deadline is here, so it is finished now.
Is there a piece, while I've got you on this topic, that is unfinished for you that you just can't accept that it's done? Like that you're still working away at it, it just eats away and you're just like, I don't know how I can ever finish this one?
I think when I have stuff that I just can't finish like that, I generally put it aside and then I'll just come back to it later, because I think if you can't finish it and you're still messing, it means that there's something wrong with it, like elsewhere, maybe in the concept or in the base of it. So no amount of detailing or whatever is going to fix it, because maybe there's something else wrong with it and you need to sort of look at it again and maybe start again.
And Wilson, what about yourself? So how do you know a piece is finished?
I know it's finished when my partner says it's finished. So I have a habit of finishing something, not good for a podcast, but I'm inverted commas finished. Yeah. And then I'll show my partner and she'll look at it and just be like, look, it's not done. You've missed these things here. This doesn't work. And I realized that maybe it's slight ADHD, but I sometimes just get bored, or I want to move on to the next thing. And so when I think I've done it well, I'll stop. But really, what I then have now learned to do is put it aside for maybe a day or an evening, come back the next day, and then I'll see, actually, that's wrong. That needs to be fixed. Needs to tinker with that a bit. And then I can work on it a little bit more. But I think I'm fairly good at, that's the first barrier. And then once I get past that and work on it a bit more, I think I'm fairly good at just being yeah, I think this is done and this is good.
Have you got a design room or a editing suite where you're there's something sat on there that's always niggling away at you and you're I need to finish this?
Yeah, I've got a long catalogue of artwork that's half made that I need to get around to finishing. It will get done eventually, but it is nice when you eventually get around to finishing those pieces and you can kind of draw a line under it and move on, and you know that they're as good as they can be. It's really satisfying.
My final question for you both today is there a dream, either franchise or piece or movie or something that means a lot to you that would be a dream project to work on? Some of the artists I've spoken to today, Doaly was talking about wanting to do a piece for Marvel, and he got to achieve that, and then WWE wrestling and stuff like that. But is there something that is the dream, the thing that's always making you kind of reach higher?
For me, probably Godzilla. I love those kind of things. So I'd love to do a Godzilla film or any kind of giant monster, or even Ray Harryhausen, that sort of thing. I always love that kind of films. So yeah, probably Godzilla.
How good was it that last week no one knew, and then suddenly Netflix dropped Godzilla -1? That was amazing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of love for that film here, because I think it's one of the greatest films I've seen in probably the last 10 years. And I want more people to watch it without the dubbing. It's amazing. Great film. And Royalston, what about you? Is there a dream?
I'm a big fan of comics. Particularly, for me, the one that stands out is Jason Aaron's Thor run. That was the first full run of comics that I read right all the way through to the end of N. And when Thor Love and Thunder was coming out and I knew that Jane Foster was going to be in it and it was going to be based on that run, I was incredibly excited. It didn't quite do what the comics did. I suppose it can't really, because that story's been told over 10 years as opposed to 2.5 hours. But my dream would be to either work on a Thor comic cover or to do a Thor film that was maybe based around Jane Foster as Thor, or Goddess of Thunder, because that's the main focus of Jason Aaron's run, and it's just such a brilliant story. It's so good.
Everyone give a huge round of applause today for Royalston and Carly for coming on the podcast. So thank you so much.
So that was ROYALSTON and Carly AF. Both really awesome artists, really great to talk to. First time on the Mark and Me podcast for them both, but it won't be their last. I will make sure that when I do my next round of the Voice Behind the Art specials, both of those will be included because they're really, really lovely and incredibly talented. And as I said with the first set of guests, please go and check out ROYALSTON and Carly AF's work online. You'll not be disappointed, and go and treat yourself because they've got some incredible pieces of work and were blowing my mind all weekend with their incredible stuff. My final guest on today's episode, and I'm thrilled to end with this one, is Drew Millward. Now this guy is an absolute legend, one of my favourite artists of all time. I absolutely love his style. I believe you'll know his pieces of work from everywhere because he's so good, so unique and such a talent. And it's such a great interview. He's so upbeat, so much energy, and definitely someone that will be coming on for an episode of Mark and Me's Voice Behind the Art very, very soon. So here's me and Drew talking all things art.
Right now, on the Mark and Me podcast live at Vice Press, I'm joined by truly, and I'm not just saying this, he hasn't given me any money, one of my favourite artists. I own his fingerprints and stuff like this. Here's Drew, everyone. Hi. Hi. Drew, what I love to do with everyone that's coming on the live podcast today, I'm going to go down a nostalgia kind of road down the nostalgia trip. And I wanted to know, as a kid, was there a certain film you fell in love with or watched religiously that made you fall in love and start looking at the artwork and the design and the posters?
It's a really tricky one. And it wasn't so much films, I don't think. I think prior to even being interested in any sort of films, it was kids TV. Yeah, I think was perhaps probably more formative than anything else. I'm getting on. So,
are you an 80s kid?
I am. I was born in 1981.
82.
Yeah. So, a lot of the stuff around that time, a lot of kids TV. I mean, what was it? We only had over an hour a day anyway. But they did show a lot of older things that were repeated. So, I remember watching a lot of the small films things, so like the Clangers and Ivor the Engine, and things like that. And I think I was completely obsessed with sort of like I still am, I suppose, but there's sort of like the handmade element of that. And I think in later years, finding out that it was literally made in someone's shed by two men is, that's where it starts. I was always drawn towards the visual aspects of things, I think. And I think a lot of sort of past that point, a lot of sort of 80s cartoons and things that I really love. I love watching Mask, as everyone did at that sort of age. But I also remember watching a cartoon which no one really remembers anymore, called Jamie and the Magic Torch, which was...
The biggest cheer of the day has been for Jamie and the Magic Torch.
I feel like Peter Kay. do you remember that? I loved that. It was I was completely obsessed with it. And then going back to it now, it's not quite as good as I remember. But it was. I mean, it was. Yeah, it kind of, those sorts of things stay with you, don't you? You can't ever shape those really formative things sort of from such an early age. Yeah, so, I guess that was it. Film-wise, I remember seeing Howard the Duck at the cinema, and I remember seeing Labyrinth, and I have a sneaky suspicion we might have seen them both on the same day. Now, that could be my memory playing tricks on me, but
duck nipples have stayed with me for 20 years.
Well, I think what happened is I went to watch Labyrinth, and then my two stepbrothers went to see Howard the Duck.
Right.
And it was a very small cinema in Bolton where you could just walk between the screens. So, watched Labyrinth and then saw the climax of Howard the Duck. So, in my mind, they are inextricably linked.
That's a very awful nightmare for some people.
Well, I mean, David Bowie in very tight trousers and then exploding ketchup bottles. It's in fairness, it explains an awful lot.
Yeah, that's fair. So was it a bit later on, obviously this is when you were a kid, was it a bit later on that you started really taking note of artwork as maybe, was it certain album covers or was it films, or how was it that they kind of gauged your interest?
To be honest, I think I kind of, I just always really loved drawing.
Yeah.
So I think it was me drawing things and through. I mean, it's really weird because I drew as a kid and really loved it. I did a fine art degree and fucking hated it. And it was only after doing a degree in fine art that I started making posters for bands because we were putting bands on and we needed posters to advertise those gigs. So I kind of fell into it. I'm very lazy, so I don't have any sort of like, there's no overarching sort of like, I need to do this. It was kind of like, well, you're going to pay me 30 quid for a poster? I'll leave my well-paid job then and do that instead.
Were you scared? Were you nervous knowing that you wanted to try and do something that you're going to fall in love with and not have to work another day in your life? As in, oh God, the 9 till 5?
Well, I mean, I wasn't cut out for that. But I knew I hated working in an office and in a normal job, but you don't really have that fear when you're, 20 odd. It's kind
There's no fears about anything.
No, that comes later. Yeah. It's kind of like, 30 quid. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Yeah, no, it didn't take long to realise that, I wasn't cut out to work in an office. So it seemed that if someone was willing to pay me 30 quid, they might pay me a little bit more money at some point. So I just went all in with 2 feet.
So with all these bands obviously paying you 30 quid or a bit more and then doing all these posters, when did it kind of then go into the realm of, movies, cinema, films? Like one of my favourite pieces you've done for, I think it was Vice Press, was The Thing. I think absolutely incredible. Like to try and even take on Jaws or The Thing and do your own original kind of concept is difficult because it's such an iconic film and an iconic poster. But you've got your own style. You've got something that when I see it, I'm like, that's Drew.
Yeah, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, I guess. I find making film posters incredibly difficult. It's you're reinterpreting the visual medium, and you already work in a visual medium. Making gig posters, you're taking some of the visual aesthetics of a band, but the sonic aesthetics, you're not recreating anything that already exists. And I love the freedom for that. With making film posters, I find it a lot more there's a lot more constraints on what you can do.
Yeah.
Like the Carpenter ones that I've done with Vice I've loved those. They've been great to do. And they've allowed me to kind of run with doing my own thing, and that's worked out great. But I have done other stuff for, I know for a number of years working with like Mondo and things where it was kind of, there were a lot more sort of roadblocks put in place because often, and also working with studios directly as well where, no, the likeness isn't right. Oh, we need this. And it's like, well, if I do the likeness right, then it's not going to look like my work. And there's plenty that I've had to walk away from for that reason. So it's kind of like, it's great. It's kind of like you talk like your own speaking voice. You can't really change that. It's like asking Metallica to write a ska song. It doesn't really work. It's kind of, if you do have your own style, for better or worse, you are kind of stuck with it, and that's you then trying to shoehorn what you do into something else. Which
is there a lot of projects that you've worked on that didn't get finished because of this frustration of trying to make something too alike and then it backfiring and not being you anymore?
Sometimes. There's things that I've chosen to not do.
Yeah.
There's plenty of things I've said no to because I know that it wouldn't really work. But then there's things that I think will work and then they've become an absolute nightmare on other sort of counts. But I think I love the freedom of
working with sort of a bit of a clean slate and just being able to do kind of whatever you want. It's
What's been, and I don't want to make it a negative thing, but what's been a really frustrating project that you've worked on and thought, I don't know if I can finish this. Like, this is driving me insane.
there was
If it's vice press, let's call them out. Like, let's be honest. If it's one of the,
It never is.
because I think the dialogue between us is the fact that they ask me to do things and I say no.
yeah,
Until something comes up when I go, no, actually I will. It's the reason that I've only done the Carpenter films with them, because I feel like those films mean so much to me and are so sort of ingrained. I can kind of justify doing my take on them. There's lots of other things that I don't think would work as well. They asked me to do a Suspiria one, and I fucking love that film, but I don't think it works for me. I don't think that would work. And I tried and aborted it quite quickly.
I'm just thinking, correct me if I'm wrong. So I've got the thing from you. You've done the Fog.
Yeah,
Would you do Big Trouble in Little China? Have you not?
I would fucking love to do Big
Yeah?
Trouble in Little China. It's not happened yet. I
You're
did say
listening right now, Matt and James. Yeah, I can imagine you doing that to go with the rest of them.
Yeah, I think there's enough there to pick away at that it would be fun to do.
I only want 10% now for planting the seed. If it gets done and you're here next year, I'll have 10%.
Yeah, well, you can certainly have a 3 print.
Are there still any dream projects that I mean, that could be one, but is there any others that you're still really wanting to do for yourself? Forget the companies and everyone else?
You know what? And it sounds shit, doesn't it? But I every project that I do because I really enjoy doing it. There's plenty of things that I don't do because I don't want to do them, and I know that I'm in an incredibly fortunate position to be able to turn things down. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, so there's things that perhaps I should have done that didn't. But I still love my job on a day-to-day basis. I love making labels for beer because I love beer. I love making posters for bands because I love music.
So is there a band that you've not done a piece for yet that you love, that you'd be like, wow, I hope one day they ask me?
Again, it's a really weird one because it's the bands that I do work with are incredibly understanding and hire me to make the work that I want to make. So I kind of get to make the work I want to make for whichever band asks me to. And there's I'd love to do a Tom Waits poster, but I'd also think that I wouldn't be able to do it because it's
Too much pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd freak myself out. So I've done work for hundreds of bands, but they all ultimately they've all been good enough to let me do kind of what I want to do. That's it's not very exciting.
It's a great place to be in.
It's a lovely place to be, yeah. I feel incredibly fortunate every single day of my life that I get to do that.
I love the positivity here. I love the happiness. I love the fact that you're not like, oh, there is this dream band I've never got to do. You're like, well, actually, the bands I've done I've all loved and I've had a great time.
I think very early on, so we talked like a long, long time ago, I think some of the first bands that I got to do that were big bands, you kind of think in the back of your mind in that kind of slightly naive way. It's like, oh, this is the big break. This is going to lead to this, that, and the other. And it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Every single piece of work that you put out into the world is potentially something that someone's going to see. So if it's shit, they might see something that's shit. So the only thing you can do is make the best things that you can do. So it's like, it doesn't matter what band name's on there. The band name in some cases might sell the print, but ultimately someone's not going to want a shit poster for a good band. So you always got to try your best, haven't you?
Weirdly, a lot of people like good posters for shit bands.
There is that.
Yeah, which isn't bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's
That's it's a sweet place to
I
be.
have to draw the line now. I'm like, I hate this band, but that poster's amazing. But I don't want that poster on my wall. It's a difficult one.
Yeah, I did. There was a period of time when you kind of think, well, is there any way that I could just crop it? Can I make a print that is literally
take your name off.
Can put on a guillotine and take it away?
Yeah.
That's,
Coldplay, right? If I just take your name off because I like your artwork, but not you.
yeah, I mean that's.
No
I
disrespect to Coldplay, but
I think it's valid, and it's kind of. I mean, it's no different from the film posters. You've got to love the film to have that on your wall. It's just a slightly different arena. It's but if ultimately what you're doing is making work that you really enjoy making, that's kind of the end goal for anyone, I would have said.
my final question for you now, obviously I'm conscious of time, but is there a favourite piece you've done that you're really proud of that, you know, if you're buried tomorrow, you're like, I want to take that one with me. That's the one I want to, that's my legacy.
Oh, God.
Put you on the spot.
You know what? It's not one that is particularly it's not particularly well known, and no one really cares. But I made a poster for Ben Folds 5 quite a few years ago, and I got to meet the band, and they are a band that I deeply, deeply loved when I was in my formative teenage years. So on the poster, I drew in the house that I grew up in, and my brother's camper van, where we used to listen to Ben Folds 5 all the time. And I think that's one of those things where it's kind of like, it's kind of for me, it's a nice thing. No one else gives a shit, but it's like,
It's what matters to you, man.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything is. That's it. Yeah, you can only make work for yourself. Otherwise, you'll drive yourself mad.
Genuinely, this has been one of my favourite interviews. I wish we had like 2 hours. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say it live, it's being recorded, but come on, Mark and me, and just do a whole episode talking music, film, and everything for like
I'd love to.
an hour, hour and a half. We'll do it in a couple of weeks.
I would absolutely love to.
Guys, give it up for Drew. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
So, that brings us to the end of the first part of this Vice Press Open House special. Now, don't worry, although we've had some incredible interviews today, that's not it. We've got a second part coming up, and it's out right now, so go and check it out. This time round, we're going to be joined by John J. Pearson, Paul Shipper, Luke Priest, Mark Bell, and Matt Ferguson. Before I go, I just want to give a big shout out to both Matt Ferguson and James Henshaw for putting on one of the best shows of the weekend. It was an incredible experience. I'm so grateful to be part of it, and the response was absolutely amazing. The place was sold out. It was such an amazing vibe the whole day, and everyone made me feel really welcome. So I just want to say a massive thanks to all the hard work that those guys have put on to make this event happen. I'm going to leave you all now and let you enjoy the second part of this special, but just before I go, I do want to say if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it. It does cost you absolutely nothing to do that. It's literally the click of a couple of buttons and will really help get the names of these artists out there and more people discovering their work. But these guys are the best out there, so please, if you're listening to this and have enjoyed it, share. I'll go now and just say I hope you've all enjoyed this special as much as me, and I'll speak to you all very soon.